if you're going to be consistent
Yeah.
and you're going to have a problem with today's wrestlers
Rick
because of
McGraw
their
was beefy. He wasn't 120 pounds like Hook. So, no, that doesn't work, Gary.
All right, welcome back to Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast. Monty Nefaro, only seen here out of Indie Music TV out of Long Island, New York, where we welcome wrestling legend Gary Michael Cappetta. Gary, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, doing really fine. You can't say COVID, but you can say wine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to America, Gary. That's the way it works, right?
That's number one.
Do you know
So
that we
I
had...
listened to your intro.
What's that?
Number two, yeah, I am old, and I'm proud of it. I'm still announcing.
Yeah, okay.
And number three, Pharaoh, you want to go head-to-head here about my taste in wrestling?
That wasn't me. That was him.
It was Gary. It was
Wait
all
a
him.
second. Oh, no, I'm being shut up. Gary. I'm being shut up.
I'm
But
sitting here, I'm watching it.
Yeah, well, don't worry, though. He's probably going to go after you on your opinion on wrestling. Go ahead, Mike. Serve it up.
Well,
Put me to the test.
first of all, I want to do a temperature check, Gary. We haven't spoken in a while. And
That's a little personal, don't you think?
Well, I don't want to do it that way.
Oh, okay.
But anyway.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so it's Gary in the house, baby. The Gary fans are out there by the millions.
Absolutely.
How are you feeling, Gary? How are you handling everything that's going on in this country right now? What are the thoughts of the great Gary Michael Cappetta?
I'm doing great. Staying healthy, as healthy as possible. Not taking too many risks, but I do get out still to see my indie wrestling. Because I'm a big proponent of independent wrestling and supporting the indies. That's really important to me. And about what's going on in the country, let's not even go there because we'll just alienate half of the audience. So I really don't get into
He's
that
still
publicly.
Switzerland. He's still Switzerland.
Well, listen, I totally understand.
I don't blame him. He's smart.
He's not just smart. He's like, he's got a huge fan base, and I'm sure that he doesn't want any kind of political opinions to.
Right.
But the one thing that Gary, as much as I love him, is his taste in wrestling has gone down.
Wow.
Because
This is rough.
He's certainly,
Ring the bell, Gary.
as
Ring
I
the
hear
bell.
Gary's opinions, I see that he's very pro AEW, and Gary, I got to understand, what are you doing, brother?
Everything evolves. Everything changes. Am I happy with all the different changes? No. But am I still a wrestling fan? Yeah. I mean, there's good and bad in every product that you could that you view. So I prefer, instead of going away, to stay in the mix and to speak from an old school perspective, and maybe somebody will listen. How's that?
Gary, are you able to, I know you don't exactly have the warm fuzzy in your tum-tum feelings for Vince McMahon, but are you able to at least look at today's WWE product and see some good at what's going on? Because, we're watching a Roman Reigns storyline that's developed for over a year. You got Brock Lesnar back. Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns together are magic. You got the Paul Heyman factor. It's a great storyline. Are you able to separate your personal feelings with, your past dealings with the McMahon situation and enjoy some of what Vince puts on the air today? Or is it strictly screw Vince?
Let me tell you the secret about watching Raw.
Okay.
Watch the first half hour, watch the last half hour, and you're good.
Might have a point.
Well, it's episodic. It's episodic television. And they
You
make
know,
sure that
everything
you get the flow of what they're doing every week, right?
everything in between, they just keep on running you around, and you've seen the match or um, some kind of like with the same people over and over and over again.
Hmm.
And after a while, it just gets insulting.
Is that more like a
So,
reference to the 50-50 booking, perhaps, that we like, which probably occurs in those hours you're speaking of?
yeah, I don't know who does who does the booking, who's in charge of any of that. I love the Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman, Brock Lesnar story. I think it's fascinating,
Okay.
and that's enough to keep my interest.
But
But once again, first half hour, last half hour of Raw.
okay, so you gave a little caption of the thoughts of a WWE program. So now I ask you this: is if I'm going to watch AEW, what do I
Yeah.
do when I watch an AEW program?
AEW is very different in the sense that when you watch a WWE show, it's like time stands still. It's like, really? We're only 20 minutes into this program? We're only 40 minutes into this program? AEW, to me, it flies by, but it's very frenetic. Like, I don't understand all the time how they get from this point to that point to the other point. And I can't remember what happened 2 months ago. So something will happen 2 months ago, and then all of a sudden it will be important next week. And it's like but the show, the good part of the show, those elements that are good are terrific. I mean, Brian Danielson and CM Punk and Max. There's a lot of good there. I like Daniel Garcia. I like Hook. Of the younger guys. Yeah, I
My
like
money is on you.
FTR.
If you wrestle Hook, my money is on you. By the way, I just wanted to let you know that Hook is probably about as
You'll
big
never
as your
see it.
leg. And how do you, Gary? How do you feel about the smaller wrestlers? For God's sakes, Gary, when you were announcing the ring announcing back in the day, you were introducing Hulks like Hulk Hogan or George the Animal Steel, huge man, scary man, Killer Khan, huge, scary, Sergeant Slaughter. Now we have Hook. Does it mean I'm old fashioned to say you got to be a little bit bigger than me if I'm watching? I mean, any thoughts to the smaller athlete today?
Yeah, it's not necessarily old fashioned. It's just a matter of what you like and what you don't like. Yeah, I mean, there was no doubt that years ago when you would walk through an airport and there were wrestlers coming at you, walking the other way, you knew this was an athlete. This guy was an entertainer. He was a wrestler. But it's changed. Look at it another way, and you can say, well, more people are getting opportunities that didn't have them before. Look at boxing or UFC, where there are different weight classes. So they have smaller guys that compete. Maybe that'll make you feel better.
But how about when a Sugar Ray Leonard crosses over and holds Mike Tyson's title? I'm having a hard time with that. Shouldn't there be a more definitive, designation when you're a heavyweight? You're a heavyweight. Does the world title even count as a heavyweight championship anymore with some of the guys that have been holding it?
Yeah, I don't. I understand what you're saying. I don't. But who is a heavyweight champion now that is a midget?
Well, thankfully, right now, Vince McMahon is Vince is always pretty much, for the most part, stuck with bigger guys. But you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
We've seen smaller guys. We've seen a Kofi Kingston hold the world title. We've seen guys that are much smaller holding the world title.
Yeah, and it has happened in the past. I mean, it's your David and Goliath story. It's getting behind the underdog and rooting for the underdog, with the theory that anyone can be beaten on any particular day. You can make an argument for it. I agree with you in the sense that when I see a heavyweight championship match, I want to see heavyweights. I get it. I want to see a Brock Lesnar. I want to see a Roman Reigns. But you know, so what is your alternative? Is your alternative just to go away, not watch it anymore?
No, of course not. Of course not. But I would appreciate, and you know, if you're going to announce somebody, could you at least, if they do weigh 161, could you tell me that they're 195, please? Because I might believe that anyway, if you understand what I'm saying. Well, look, back in the day,
I
we didn't
agree.
know exactly how much the guys weighed that you were announcing, and I have a feeling some of those weights weren't accurate. But if they looked like they could be that, then it was believable to me. Now they're announcing
Yeah, I
guys
used
now
to make
weighing
them up.
161 Jungle Boy, right, Mike?
Sure.
You know, so
Unless we were doing like in WCW, unless we were doing a televised broadcast where they were going to have on the screen what the weight is. Usually, I would just make them up.
you would make
In W,
really?
Did you really?
you know,
Really?
in WWF, sure. Just
Wow! Did anybody
size
get
the
mad
guy
at
up
you?
and just,
Did anybody ever get mad at you? What do you mean I weigh 300? What are you saying? I'm fat, Gary? I mean, did it ever happen when you were making up these weights?
no,
Oh
no.
man!
And there's certain this is going to sound real crazy, but there are certain numbers that I would rather announce
Okay.
that I could boom better,
Gotcha.
and so I would use those numbers more.
I actually get that. Excellent. No, that makes sense.
So, Gary, also recently, again, you were around for a long time, so you've probably seen this, and I want your opinion on this. The WWE releasing its wrestlers, again, social media is growing, so everybody finds out everything. What are your feelings about that? Do you agree with it? I mean, not that do you agree with it, but is this something that's always gone on, or is this just normal business in the industry?
No, when wrestling changed from the territory days to a few national companies, that's going to happen. Nobody who signs a contract signs for life. It's the entertainment business, and it's very flighty in that way. There are some individuals who are fortunate and who have had very long runs, but I don't like to see anybody lose their position. But the only alternative, and this seems to be what Tony Khan does, is to continue to pay talent and not use them, and then bring them back a few months later, and then it feels fresh again. But you have to freshen up your roster, or you're going to have, for the same reason that I only watch the first and last half hours of Raw. It's because I'm tired of seeing the same guys and girls against each other.
This is the problem I have with AEW, right? Growing up on wrestling or loving wrestling, the storyline was more important than the actual wrestling in many cases. I mean, would it be fair for me to say to you, Gary, that today's athletes are better than the ones that wrestled back in the 70s and the 80s, and the wrestling really wasn't very high level, but the storyline and the characters were. Aren't you, as an AEW fan, aren't you in fear that them not building storylines and not really building the character, it's just going to be an epic fail at the end of the day?
Well, AEW has storylines. It's just very frenetic. It's very quick.
Right.
There's not a whole lot of time
Right.
for most of what their stories are that they're telling for them to evolve. Now that there are exceptions, there are exceptions to that, but I don't have the kind of brain or attention span to remember what happened several months ago, and then it all just disappear, and then they bring it up again 3 months later.
Right.
Like that is confusing to me. But there's an excitement with AEW that doesn't exist with WWE. There's a spontaneity to it. So there's a positive side to things. And they're very fan friendly. So that's going to help them in keeping their loyal base and hopefully add to the base. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but it also helps, like when you say the guys are more athletic today, it also helps that they're a lot lighter, so they can do things that most of the heavyweights, wouldn't be able to do.
What insights can you share about Spiros Arion, the person, maybe Bruno's top opponent in his second reign?
Wow. I'm going to disappoint him. I never had any personal interaction with Spiros. He was still wrestling for the WWF when I started announcing, but maybe months into it, maybe a year, and he was gone. So I didn't work that much with Spiros Arion. Boy, that goes way back. He was married to Miss Grease.
Oh.
Oh, was she hot?
She's Miss
Yeah.
Grace.
She was
she
hot,
wasn't
huh?
cold.
Well, listen,
I mean, was
there's
she
a difference
hot?
between Miss USA and
I'm half Greek. Don't you dare.
I'm not. I wasn't going to say Greece, but I
Miss
mean
Greece.
Miss. I don't know.
Greece is super exotic. Miss
Well, anyway, I don't want.
Greece.
You know what? I'm going to play Switzerland here too, so
Yeah,
I'm not going
yeah,
to
you
mention any
better.
other countries.
We love Vinny over here. We call him Vinny. I feel weird calling him Vinny. Why do you hate Vince McMahon so much? You want to explain that to us?
I don't hate him.
Okay.
I saw him
Okay, fair enough.
a few years ago. Yeah, I saw
Did he
him.
see
at,
you? Because you know how
yeah.
Vince is. Okay.
I saw him at Bruno's funeral in Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did you speak to him? I mean,
Did he
No.
say hello to you? No.
No,
Okay.
but I thought he, I thought he and Stephanie were there,
okay,
and I thought they were very respectful.
sure.
Stephanie got up and spoke in the church, and Vinny didn't draw attention to himself. No, I don't have any problem with that.
All right, so I'm gonna ask you this tough question
and,
then,
and
right?
I don't hate him.
Okay,
Hate is
you don't.
like-
This is
it's a
but
four-letter word. I don't.
but
Okay.
here's a question to
Dislike?
you. Obviously, you knew Bruno, and Bruno's an icon to so many. But do you think that as Bruno got older and the wrestling started to change, Bruno became very sour grapeish and just just couldn't handle the change and didn't like the fact that maybe Hulk Hogan was becoming more popular than him? I mean, what are your thoughts on that whole thing?
The wrestling was changing.
At first, at first he was, but then even Bruno adapted. Do you remember Bruno refereeing some matches in WCW?
Yes.
And then he agreed to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. He adapted. He came around a little bit. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing, as I disagree with some of the things that are happening in wrestling today. And I can't blame the wrestlers for what they do that I don't agree with. I can't blame the referees for what they do or don't do that I don't agree with. And I can't blame the announcers. It all comes from the top. Whoever's signing the checks, that's the person that's crafting the show. And for instance, there are certain moves that certain wrestlers are known for. They're finishing moves. No one else should be doing those. Like back in the day when it was a big deal when Superfly Jimmy Snuka
Yes.
would mount the top turnbuckle and do the huge splash. No one else did that. But in today's environment, if a wrestler hears another wrestler's move get a big pop, then they steal it. They mimic it just for that quick response from the audience. There should be an adult in the room that says, no, you don't do that. Like, that is his finishing move. No one else should be doing. Otherwise, it's not special.
The Ring Boy scandal, which I'm assuming you were around for. Probably, I don't know if you knew how much about it, so I'm going to ask you, with the Ring Boy scandal, obviously Bruno, Superstar Graham, ex-wrestlers pointed the accusing finger at Vince McMahon for not doing anything about it. You just mentioned about people being on the top and being in charge. John Arizzi, Lee Cole, they both felt that Vince was responsible for this horrific issue that was going on. What does Gary Michael Cappetta think about the situation?
I would suspect, I don't know 100% for sure, but I would suspect that Vinny knew what was going on and just, ignored it, just turned away from it. And that is, that's on him. That's not forgivable. But the people that actually did the acts that preyed on the young ring crew, for instance, that's where the blame should go. But yeah, I would have to believe that he was aware of what was going on.
How about
wrestling? He definitely was aware of what was going on with the doctor and the drugs, happening in the locker room.
Right. Which, by the way, we will say at that point in time were legal until they became illegal, right? What about the wrestler's responsibility? Bruno goes on Donahue and says that he knew this was going on and Vince did nothing about it. Where's the culpability of those wrestlers? Superstar Graham, Bruno Sammartino. Bruno had a lot of power back then. Bruno could have made a difference. Is he culpable for what happened?
I'm still stuck on what you said about the drugs.
Well, on the steroids, when the steroids were first being used, they were legal within the United States. When the government got involved, they became illegal.
Right.
At some point,
this is
in
true.
that
and the government themselves were
timeline.
Turning a blind eye until all of a sudden they weren't anymore. That's for sure.
But what I don't know, and I honestly I don't know, if maybe it's a difference between being legal and ethical, but for the doctor to dispense drugs without having a reason, like a medical reason to do it, to me is criminal.
Yeah, he was the candidate.
Now, I don't know if it's against the law or if just ethically that's wrong.
Right.
But we're not talking about dispensing drugs to his patients, that were in his office and had a full examination, and he was able to look at x-rays, and he was just trying to be one of the boys and just pass it. I mean, I used to watch him come into the locker room with a cardboard box filled with little white bags, and the boys would line up and he would just, give them their goodie bag.
Any thoughts on the fact that Vince McMahon Sr., who is obviously, pretty much beloved from what I hear by most people, Vince McMahon Sr.'s champion in 1977 was Superstar Billy Graham. You're going to tell me, not meaning you, Gary, but you're going to tell me that he wasn't on roids? He's ripped. Look at him.
Right.
I mean, Vince McMahon Sr. obviously approved of Billy Graham being his champion. I didn't see Vince McMahon Sr. being, lambasted the way his son was years later for steroids.
I think it's one of these cases where it's really difficult to judge 1977 with a 2022 mentality.
Sure, I got you.
Absolutely.
I got you.
And again, we can't lose the fact that when Superstar Graham was hitting the gas, they were legal drugs in this country, right? So
that is the truth.
Vince McMahon, if guy wants to do something, there was really no background on steroids, whatever. So again, there was a point where these were legal and then became illegal.
Sure.
But I want to still go back to the ring boy issue. Is there culpability on the wrestlers, right? Especially, that they said they knew what was going on and they put the blame on Vince for not doing anything about it. Isn't there ownership of the independent contractor / employee, however you want to present this, of protecting young children?
The short answer is yes. I do agree with you.
You know, Gary, while we got you here, I know this is coming a little out of left field, but look, I grew up watching
That's
you
a
on
surprise, right, Gary? Out of left field by the Pharaoh.
Yeah.
He's probably going to ask you if you like a peanut butter sandwich.
I am not going to ask you if you like that. So, how do you feel about Smucker's jelly, Gary? Any thoughts on Smucker's? No, honestly, growing up watching you, announcing All-Star Wrestling. I mean, geez, we used to go to UHF and catch it on Channel 67 sometimes out here in Smithtown. What did you think about Rick McGraw? I know he left us at a young age, but was he possibly going to be headed for great things? Because I still remember when Arnold Skolin came out with a young, quick-draw Rick McGraw. And, of course, Skolin was usually the stepping stone. He was Bruno's manager. He was Bob Backlund's manager. Skolin comes out with Rick McGraw. Was there any rumblings in the back that Rick could really have a future? Because it was a shame he left us so young. I thought he was great. Any thoughts on Rick McGraw?
I'm gonna call you out on something there, Pharaoh.
No. Oh, what did I do?
Uh-oh.
Go ahead, Gary. He's Gary. I'm wrong. I'm wrong
you're
before
gonna
it starts. Go ahead.
If you're going to be consistent,
Yeah.
and you're going to have a problem with today's wrestlers,
Rick
because of
McGraw
their-
was beefy. He wasn't 120 pounds like Hook. So, no, that doesn't work, Gary. It doesn't. So, give me something else. Come on. I love him, but I'm not going to let him get me on that. That doesn't work. That doesn't
Wow,
work.
did I
Rick
push your
McGraw
button
compared
or
to
what?
Hook. Rick McGraw's forearm is bigger than Hook. What are you talking about? Honestly. I mean, he's out there with Arnold Skolin.
I don't even remember him coming out with Arnold Skolin.
This is great. I'm the only one who remembers this. This is terrible. Oh.
They thought that Joe McHugh wasn't going to be able to make it.
Okay.
So they asked me to come to do the TV on the Tuesday as well as the Wednesday. We used to tape every third Tuesday, every third Wednesday in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and then in Hamburg.
Right.
And as it turns out, Joe showed up. So I didn't stay, but I did say hello, and it was just a quick hello, goodbye.
How was the hellos, though? Did you do your ring announcer thing like, I'm Gary, Michael, he's like, and I'm Jew. Is that how you guys said hello to each other?
Did you ever want to, punch Joe McHugh in the face?
No, but I bet you wanted to punch Michael Buffett in the face.
No, why would I want to do that?
I don't know. You know what? I got this
maybe?
envision that, ring announcers kind of competitive
Yeah.
against
Are
each
you
other.
guys
and,
competitive?
you kind of just want to
In
knock
the ring
the guy
announcing
off.
business, it's like, piss off. This
You
is
have
my...
you have me hating. You have me wanting to punch people. It's like, I'm GMC. Come on.
The
Oh
last-
my
the
God.
last time you're gonna do
is
this
Is
show.
it true you egged Vince's house last week? This is awful. This is really awful.